Hey y'all, Andrew Bateman here with the GCK Kayaking and Outdoors, and I wanted to pose a question to you, give you my thoughts, and also get yours. What do you think is the most prevalent factor in accidents that occur while paddling, from the smallest to the unfortunately fatal as well? Um, as I reflected on some of my own experiences and also did some research into things that have caused major problems and even unfortunately some fatalities in kayaking recently along the Gulf Coast, I wanted to share my observations. Now, as I pose the question, what do you think the primary factor in accidents in kayaking is? It would be understandable that many would say, well, weather, current, other craft, etc. And while those all are certainly factors, I would pose to you that complacency is the number one factor that leads to those other things having the opportunity to unfortunately cause kayakers problems and even in some cases cause them to lose their lives. So I wanted to share with you a couple of things that I found out as I researched that kind of resonated, and then also share a couple of experiences of mine, and I hope you'll do the same. So hopefully we can, again, continue to encourage one another to undertake this wonderful pastime uh, with the utmost diligence and safety so we can enjoy it for many years to come. So, as I looked into some things, and we've even had some recent occurrences out in some of the bays beyond Galveston where unfortunately a couple of kayakers have lost their lives. And so you might expect, when you look into these kind of occurrences, that it would be beginners, brand new novice paddlers who are perhaps getting themselves into trouble or biting off more than they can chew. And I found that not to be the case. In fact, in every one that I found recently, there wasn't any case where it wasn't somebody who was relatively skilled, who wasn't on grounds that they had been on likely many times before, knew the routes, and as such would have some idea of the conditions that they might face. And so that got me really thinking, how is it that we're losing skilled paddlers to such circumstances? And so that leads me back to the very crux of this discussion, and that is complacency. Like I said, they were on routes that they were familiar with. Just today, I'm out here on Lake Anahuac right now. I'm not getting too far from the mouth of Turtle Bayou because you can tell there's a little bit of wind. The wind's not terrible, but it says there's going to be gusts up to 27 coming through, so I'm not getting too far out. Um, but again, being out here in wind and thinking back on some of my experiences, and also passing a couple areas where I had some scary experiences. One potentially fatal and with lasting repercussions. As I look down at part of my anatomy right now, I can see the scars from those times. It got me thinking about that again. So I wanted to share some of this. Now, we might be so used to a route that we don't think much about it. We might be so used to our equipment we don't think much about checking it. We might look at the forecast, for example, and see, again today we've had a lot of rain, but see relatively low winds as it just shows up on our smartphone. And we may not go further to look at the wind conditions hour by hour and look at what the gusts are expected to be. So today is kind of an anomaly. I've never had this low regular, we'll call it regular wind, and yet gusts are going to be up to 27, it says. So whatever metric that is, that's abnormal. It's not usually that substantial. And that just goes to show you how you may underestimate or not be expecting what's coming, because I have, especially on waters around here, had the weather turn temperamental in what seems like a matter of minutes. Charlotte, for example, I've been out on, and not a cloud in the sky, and then all of a sudden you start hearing thunder, and it seems like that. Dark clouds are moving in, and there's lightning flashing all in them, and that's kind of a creepy situation to be in. And so also, as I've gone through a lot of these areas, and two of the launches I've been to in this past week, you see memorials set up for, again, experienced kayakers who never made it back to the launch on one day. So the saying goes, everything's fine until it isn't. And this isn't meant to be a scare tactic video or a clickbait video or whatever the case is. Again, 99.8% of the paddles that I go on are completely uneventful in terms of anything unsafe or anything distressing. But I will share a couple of mine. Some of y'all have heard I've had a couple of run-ins with alligators, and it's only been in specific circumstances. So the first one, a long time ago, I was trying to take a picture of an alligator on a bank in Armand Bayou. I'm out of space on my camera. This was before phones were widespread in cameras. That tells you how old I am. But so I'm having to delete pictures to make room to take some more. So I'm so focused on the camera, I'm not paying attention to where the current is drawing me. And then I hear kind of a growling hiss sound, and I'm maybe about a yard from this alligator that I was just a couple of moments ago several yards from. And it kind of throws a fit, thrashes into the water. And this is when I'm not super used to alligators. So I know now it's not a big deal when they come into water. I didn't know that then. So he rolled into the water to the point that his tail actually slapped the side of my kayak as he went in and rolled under. Now, what put me in that situation? Was it because the alligator was a detriment? No, it was because I, being a fool, was not paying attention, too busy looking at a screen. There's a theme here, and drifting closer to this alligator who's just chilling in his natural habitat. So that was that. But it was my complacency that led to that situation. The other alligator occurrence, and I have done a video on this, uh, again, out on Mud Lake, or now Lake Mark Kramer, place I'd been over and over and over. And yeah, alligators all over the place out there, used to it. Got stuck on what I thought was a branch, and so I start trying to push off and wiggle and do all that stuff, and all of a sudden the water erupts around me. A giant tail comes out on one side of the boat, and then on the bottom of the boat, bang, bang, bang. Thankfully, nothing else happened. I almost was kicked out to the right. I wasn't, thankfully. I don't know what would have occurred then. But again, why did that happen? Was it because I was being hunted by a predatorial alligator, if that's a word? He was just chilling again in his habitat. I didn't know, and then I start inadvertently poking him with my paddle. So I'm basically assaulting an alligator in his home, and so that's not cool. So low water, and I would have one more low water experience with a gator that wasn't that bad. But again, what are the factors there? I'm familiar with an area, so I'm not thinking too much about it. I'm not focused on the conditions, not thinking about how low the water levels are, that the avenues for alligators to get out of your way are less and less, and therefore I have issues with them. Like I said, I've had several with weather, which thankfully haven't been too bad. I've had several with wake, and that's why I say that my greatest concern generally is going to be wind and wake, whether it's wind coming from a weather system or whether it's wake coming from, whether it's a power boat, a little power boat going by, a barge, or even a tanker a mile off, which we've covered in past videos, that have caused me some of the scariest moments of my entire paddling existence. And the other one I'll share actually happened right down Turtle Bayou from here a long time ago, before I was really versed in it, and I was also a lot more careless, if I'm honest. And I'll do a more deep dive into this, and a lot of you have already heard this, but this one was almost fatal. I launched in from a bank that was kind of muddy, and it was too elevated, especially for somebody my size and a boat that was not near big enough for me at the time. Pitched out into the water. Was going to get back out and do it again because it's happened before. I was a big guy in a little boat. Makes me think of Chris Farley. But no big deal. You get in till you nail the launch right, and then you're good to go. But that wasn't the case here. I couldn't get out of the water. It was too muddy trying to pull my large self up the bank. And I came back down, and a branch or rebar or something, there was all kinds of stuff under the water in the bayou there. Went through the bottom of my left foot and out the side. And that's why I was saying I look down and I see that scar every time that I'm paddling to remind me. And I could feel the blood pumping, and it was an arterial bleed. And thankfully, it's a cool story in some senses, and in other senses, it's a terrible story that I'll go into in a deeper dive, like I said. But I had the knowledge to know it was arterial. And thankfully, due to recent events, I had what I needed to deal with it. But it took me a while to get out of the water. Blood was pumping. Alligators were present, which seems to be a theme. Not that the alligator was a problem, but I just want to point that out. But I did have an arterial bleed. Doing something that I'd done before. And no big deal if I get pitched out on my boat, I'll just get back in. Well, everything was fine till it wasn't. And I almost lost my life. Thankfully, it was packed with hemostatic gauze, and I made it somewhere to get it taken care of. So avoided that, but a couple, maybe another 30 to 40 seconds, I might have blacked out, who knows. And you know what happens from there with arterial bleeds. But then, because I didn't treat it properly afterwards, I very nearly lost my leg below the knee. Went through a bunch of operations and things like that. And all this is just to say, one, they were certainly learning experiences, and I could have avoided them. This is my whole point. If I'd taken just a few seconds to look around and say, this is a dumb idea, it's not worth the risk, let's do something different. But complacency is what will get you into a hard spot every time. A friend of mine who runs combatives training and things like that says, two things: trauma teaches and complacency kills. And I think that is an apt saying. So with that said, I'd like to know some of your accounts. Hopefully, many of you had more sense than I did when I first started out doing this. But I know we've all got different experiences, and if we can share them, if we can maybe make one person avoid making some of the mistakes that we have in prior days, that would be certainly a win. So we don't want to be complacent. We want to know what's going on with the environment. We want to know that our gear is in good working order and condition. We want to know our abilities are sound, but not lean on them so much that they're a crutch and take away from our diligence and our judgment. And so we can stay safe on this, come what may. We know that we may have the caveats of bad weather, of every once in a while a cranky animal, certainly more regularly, possibly wherever you are, powered craft with people who aren't too mindful of their wake, or other paddlers and may also be inebriated at the same time, which unfortunately, having just paddled from Hugo Point, you'll see 5 crosses on the bank there as a result of that. So tragedy can occur out here. It's a rare thing, but I just want y'all to be aware of that, to maybe think every time before you get in the water somewhere and you look at the sky, or whatever the case is, you say, am I being complacent? If I am, I'm going to take a couple more minutes to think about this. It may save you some hardship, it may save you some money, and in the rare event, it may even save a life. So there you go. God bless. Stay sharp. Take care.